Before sunrise on Friday, October 13, 1307, royal officers across France opened sealed instructions and moved against the Knights Templar. The operation had been prepared in secret. Templars were arrested, their houses secured, their records taken, and their goods placed under the authority of King Philip IV. In Paris, the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was among those captured. Within days, interrogations began. Within months, accusations of heresy, blasphemy, and forbidden rituals were being repeated across the kingdom. The arrests created one of history's most durable treasure stories. Philip's agents had entered the properties of an order famous for land, castles, international transfers, royal deposits, and financial administration. Yet no contemporary record describes them discovering the mountain of gold later legend would demand. From that silence came a powerful question. If the Templars were as wealthy as medieval Europe believed, where was their treasure? The popular answer is dramatic. Someone warned the order. Wagons left the Paris temple under cover of darkness. Chests were carried west. A fleet waited at La Rochelle. 18 ships sailed before the arrests, loaded with gold, sacred relics, secret archives, and survivors who would rebuild the order. Elsewhere, that story has been connected to Scotland, Portugal, Switzerland, Rosslyn Chapel, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, Oak Island, and even voyages across the Atlantic. It has been repeated so often that many accounts begin with the treasure as an established fact and ask only where it went. But the historical question must begin one step earlier. Did a single, portable Templar treasure ever exist in the form imagined today? There is no doubt that the order was rich. There is also no doubt that medieval people associated it with money and valuables. The uncertainty concerns what that wealth looked like, who legally owned it, where it was held in 1307, and whether the absence of a spectacular royal discovery really requires a secret escape. The surviving evidence is unusually extensive. There are arrest orders, interrogation rolls, papal records, estate accounts, property surveys, local inventories, and later transfer documents. These sources do not solve every mystery, but they allow us to separate three very different things: the Templars' institutional wealth, valuables entrusted to them by other people, and the legendary hoard said to have vanished in a fleet. The first two certainly existed. The third remains unproven. 1. What treasure meant to a medieval order? The Knights Templar began in the early 12th century as a religious military order connected to the defense of Christian pilgrims and territories in the eastern Mediterranean. Over nearly 2 centuries, donations turned that small brotherhood into a network spread across Europe and the Crusader world. Its wealth was not mainly a room full of coins. It was agricultural land, vineyards, mills, pastures, livestock, town property, warehouses, rents, toll privileges, legal rights, equipment, horses, chapels, and fortified houses. A commandery in England might produce wool. A property in France might collect rents and grain. A Mediterranean house might support shipping, recruitment, or the movement of supplies. Revenue from the West helped sustain the order's military commitments in the East. This distinction matters because land can make an institution extremely wealthy without making it capable of loading that wealth onto ships. A farm worth a great deal over decades cannot be hidden in a chest. Neither can a mill, a village rent roll, a vineyard, or a legal exemption. Even livestock and stored grain are difficult to move secretly on short notice. When medieval documents describe the Templars as powerful and rich, they are often describing a productive international institution, not a treasury that functioned like a modern bullion. Vault. The order also handled money. Its houses could receive deposits, safeguard documents and valuables, transfer funds, make payments, and extend credit. The Paris Temple served at different times as a secure center for French royal finance. The New Temple in London performed financial and record-keeping services for English kings and private clients. A person traveling to the Eastern Mediterranean could deposit funds in one place and arrange access elsewhere through documents and trusted officials. These services are sometimes described as the invention of modern banking. That is too simple. Medieval Europe already had merchants, money changers, lenders, and financial instruments. The Templars did not invent banking. What they possessed was something unusually valuable: a trusted religious identity, fortified buildings, papal privileges, and a network that crossed political borders. But money held inside a Templar house was not automatically Templar money. Some belonged to kings. Some belonged to nobles, clergy, pilgrims, or other clients. Some represented debts owed to the order. Some was working capital required for salaries, purchases, transport, horses, fortifications, and campaigns. Some revenue may already have been committed before it arrived. A later legend can turn all of this into the treasure. A medieval accountant would have seen separate obligations, deposits, claims, and assets. By 1307, the Templars had also suffered a strategic catastrophe. Acre, the final major crusader stronghold on the mainland, had fallen in 1291. The order remained active from Cyprus and continued planning for a return, but its central purpose was under pressure. It still possessed estates and influence, yet it also carried the cost of maintaining men, ships, horses, and plans for wars that had not recovered Jerusalem. 2. A rich institution can have valuable assets while facing limited ready cash. That possibility is less exciting than underground gold, but it fits the financial structure far better. The treasury inside the Paris Temple. The Paris Temple became the natural center of the treasure legend because it was more than a monastery. It was a fortified enclosure in the capital, associated with records, deposits, financial administration, and the security of the French crown. For generations, French kings used the temple as a place where money and documents could be managed. Templar officials served in positions of financial trust. The building's reputation as a treasury was not invented by modern novelists. It was real. But the relationship changed over time. By the late 13th century, the French monarchy had developed more direct financial offices and was reducing its dependence on Templar management. Royal money could still pass through the temple, and the site remained symbolically powerful, but it should not be imagined as the one permanent vault containing every reserve of the order and kingdom. Philip IV's finances were under severe strain. His government funded warfare, expanded royal administration, altered the currency, imposed new demands, and had already targeted other groups whose property could be seized. His conflict with Pope Boniface VIII demonstrated how aggressively the crown could act when royal authority was challenged. It is tempting to reduce the Templar affair to one sentence: Philip owed the order money, so he destroyed his bankers. The truth is more complicated. Historians continue to debate Philip's motives. Financial gain almost certainly mattered. So did political control, the order's vulnerable position after the loss of the Holy Land, proposals to merge it with the Hospitallers, accusations already circulating, and the crown's ability to present itself as defender of the faith. Philip and his advisors may have pursued wealth while also persuading themselves that the order represented a genuine danger. Yet the king's decision only makes sense if he expected the seizure to bring advantages. The Templars held land, income, buildings, records, debts, valuables, and influence. Even without a secret chamber of gold, taking control of that network was an enormous act of expropriation. This is where the missing treasure argument often moves too quickly. Royal agents did not need to find a single vault for the arrests to be financially motivated. Control of estates could produce revenue. Confiscated goods could be sold. Debts and accounts could be examined. The crown could charge the cost of imprisoning the brothers and administering their property. It could bargain over the eventual transfer of assets. The king therefore had reasons to seize the order even if the ready cash discovered on the first morning was disappointing. 3. We also have to ask what a warning would have looked like. The arrest order was dated weeks before the operation, and many officials eventually had to participate. Leakage was possible. Some individual Templars escaped. One senior figure, Gerard de Villiers, was not captured with the leadership. But the arrests were remarkably effective. Jacques de Molay and many of the most important French Templars remained in places where the crown could seize them. If the Grand Master knew that a final coordinated destruction was imminent and had already dispatched the order's central treasure, his decision to stay behind requires an explanation. It is possible that he underestimated the threat, expected papal protection, or believed the accusations could be defeated. It is harder to reconcile his capture with the image of a leadership calmly executing a complete escape plan. The inventories after the arrests. The strongest evidence against a simple vanishing hoard story is not that royal officials claimed to find nothing. It is that governments across Europe began recording what the Templars actually possessed. In France, the seizure instructions required the king's officers to secure the order's goods, continue the cultivation of its lands, appoint responsible guardians, and create inventories. Similar records appeared in other territories as rulers responded to papal pressure. After the order was suppressed in 1312 and much of its property was assigned to the Knights Hospitaller, another documentary process began to establish what should be transferred. These inventories are not perfect. Some are incomplete. Some survive only for particular regions. Officials could steal. Local nobles could take advantage of confusion. Goods might be sold, moved, consumed, or poorly described. The costs of administration and imprisonment complicated the accounts. Medieval record keeping was detailed in some places and frustratingly silent in others. But the pattern is clear. The records describe a functioning landed organization. They contain animals, tools, crops, beds, kitchen equipment, clothing, chapel objects, debts, rents, buildings, and agricultural resources. Some houses were prosperous. Others were modest. The picture is uneven and practical. That is not what treasure hunters expect. It is exactly what historians would expect from the headquarters and regional estates of a religious order. One French inventory became so extensive that the notary explained that it required 6 large parchment sheets joined together. In England, the Crown produced surveys and accounts for seized Templar lands, tracking revenue and expenditure while the transfer to the Hospitallers was delayed. The evidence is not a single statement written after the event. It is a dispersed administrative footprint. If an enormous reserve had been hidden throughout the commanderies, the complete disappearance of every trace would be difficult to explain. If the order's value rested mainly in property, income, credit, relationships, and smaller stores of movable goods, the inventories make sense. This does not prove that no coins, documents, relics, or precious objects were removed before or during the arrests. A local official might escape with a chest. A depositor might recover valuables. A 4. Sympathetic servant might hide records. A senior brother might carry portable funds intended for operations outside France. The evidence supports the possibility of losses and escapes on a limited scale. It does not support the later image of one consolidated treasure containing the wealth of the entire order. The absence of a spectacular discovery may therefore be the result of a false expectation. Philip's men entered wealthy properties, but wealth appeared in the form of land, animals, rights, debts, and ordinary stores. They were seizing an institution, not opening a pirate chest. If you appreciate historical mysteries that separate surviving evidence from later invention, subscribe. And continue with us, because the most famous clue to the treasure appears only after the arrests, and it is much weaker than it first sounds. The single rumor that became a fleet. The central evidence for the escape story is usually attributed to testimony by a Templar brother named Jean de Chalon. In the surviving account, Jean did not say that he personally watched treasure ships leave La Rochelle. He reported that leaders had fled, that he encountered Gerard de Villiers with horses, and that he had heard it said that Gerard went to sea with 18 galleys. He also connected another fugitive with the treasure of Hugues de Perraud, one of the order's most senior officials in France. This is important evidence, but it must be handled carefully. First, it is a report inside a coercive legal process. Templar testimony was gathered under conditions shaped by imprisonment, threats, torture, official expectations, and intense pressure to produce damaging information. Not every statement is false, but none should be detached from that setting. Second, the statement is partly hearsay. The witness described what he had heard, not a departure he claimed to have observed. Third, the wording does not establish that the alleged ships left from La Rochelle. That port became attached to the story because the Templars had property and maritime activity there. It is a logical location for later writers, but the famous testimony does not provide the complete scene found in modern retellings. Fourth, the treasure of Hugues de Perraud is not necessarily the treasure of the entire Templar order. It may refer to funds, property, or valuables under one official's control. The phrase is tantalizing precisely because the record does not tell us its contents, quantity, destination, or ownership. Finally, 18 galleys would represent a remarkable concentration of vessels. The Templars certainly used ships. They transported men, horses, pilgrims, supplies, and goods. At La Rochelle, they participated in Atlantic trade, including wine exports. But military orders and rulers often hired ships when required. A maritime network is not automatically a permanent secret navy. 5. The witness statement therefore preserves a possible historical core. Gerard de Villiers escaped, horses and movable resources may have been involved. Rumors circulated that ships and treasure had departed. Everything beyond that becomes reconstruction. The wagons leaving Paris on the night before the arrests, the exact route to La Rochelle, the 18 vessels waiting together, the sacred cargo, the destination in Scotland, and the preservation of a hidden Templar command structure are not established by the testimony. This is how historical legends often grow. A short, ambiguous statement survives. Later authors fill its empty spaces with a complete journey. The most responsible conclusion is not that Jean de Chalon proves the treasure fleet, or that his evidence should be discarded entirely. It is that one pressured witness reported a rumor consistent with some individual flight. That is enough to sustain a mystery. It is not enough to establish an armada. La Rochelle and the ships that may not have vanished. La Rochelle occupies a perfect place in the imagination. It faced the Atlantic. The Templars held privileges and property there. Ships connected the region to England and other markets. If someone wanted to move people or portable goods beyond Philip's immediate reach, a western port offered possibilities. But the phrase, Templar fleet, can mislead. The Order's maritime operations were real, especially in the Mediterranean, where Crusader warfare depended on moving men, animals, food, and equipment. Yet ships could be owned, chartered, leased, or contracted for specific voyages. A list of vessels used by the Templars over time does not prove that. 18 ocean-ready ships sat under unified command at La Rochelle in October 1307. Galleys were also designed primarily for Mediterranean conditions and depended heavily on oars, crews, and frequent resupply. Atlantic merchant vessels followed different requirements. Later retellings often mix these categories, turning every ship associated with the Order into part of a military fleet capable of crossing to Scotland or even North America. No contemporary harbor record has emerged describing 18 Templar vessels leaving La Rochelle, with fugitives and treasure immediately before the arrests. No surviving cargo manifest lists the gold. No destination chronicle records their arrival. No connected chain of documents follows them to Portugal, Scotland, or beyond. Supporters of the escape theory answer that a secret operation would avoid records. That is possible. But it creates a problem. Once the missing documentation is explained as proof of successful secrecy, the claim becomes almost impossible to test. Every absent record can be treated as evidence that the conspiracy worked. Historical reasoning requires a different standard. 6. A secret voyage is possible because medieval records are incomplete. It becomes probable only when independent evidence begins to converge: port accounts, named captains, confiscated ships, foreign arrivals, financial transfers, letters, or archaeological discoveries with secure dates and contexts. That convergence has not occurred. Portugal offers a real story that is often confused with the treasure legend. King Dinis resisted the complete destruction of the Templar legacy in his kingdom. In 1319, with papal approval, the Order of Christ was established and received former Templar properties. Some former Templars could continue within a new legal institution. This was not an underground fleet secretly buying sanctuary with lost gold. It was a documented political and ecclesiastical settlement. Scotland provides another attractive refuge because Robert the Bruce was in conflict with the papacy and fought the English crown. Later stories place Templars at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. Yet, contemporary accounts of that battle do not identify a secret Templar force arriving to determine the victory. Rosslyn Chapel is even later. Its construction began in the 15th century, more than a century after the Templar suppression. Symbols inside the chapel have generated endless interpretation, but they do not form a documentary bridge from a 1307 fleet. Oak Island is farther removed still. There is no securely established medieval Templar artifact, inscription, vessel, or settlement connecting the order to Nova Scotia. The theory survives by linking one unresolved mystery to another. Where the property actually went. While legend follows ships, the documents follow land. In March 1312, Pope Clement V suppressed the Templar order. In May, the bull Ad Providum assigned most of its property to the Knights Hospitaller, with exceptions and separate arrangements in parts of the Iberian Peninsula. The transfer was neither immediate nor clean. Kings, nobles, descendants of donors, local officials, and rival institutions all had interests in the properties. Some argued that land given to the Templars should return to the donor's family. Some rulers kept control for years. Some estates had been damaged or stripped. The Hospitallers faced lawsuits, negotiations, administrative expenses, and resistance. In England, records show that the Crown took control of Templar lands after the 1308 arrests, collected revenue, and produced accounts. Although much of the property was supposed to pass to the Hospitallers, the process remained incomplete for years. France was equally complicated. Philip IV did not simply become permanent legal owner of the entire Templar network. But the Crown had controlled the property during the trial, collected income, disposed of movable goods, and claimed large sums for the costs of guarding estates and imprisoning the 7 brothers. By the time transfers were settled, the surviving value could be reduced by years of administration and extraction. This outcome explains why the seizure could benefit royal power without producing a single celebrated treasure chamber. It also explains why later observers might believe something was missing. A vast institution had been dismantled. Its property was divided, disputed, consumed, transferred, and absorbed into other systems. No final document listed every coin, relic, document, or valuable object once associated with it. The Templar archives themselves are incomplete. Some trial and property records survive in royal, papal, hospitaller, and local collections, but the order's own centralized administrative archive has not appeared as a complete body. Documents may have been destroyed, dispersed, reused, taken by officials, or lost during later centuries. Missing records are real. They are not automatic evidence of treasure. The most likely fate of the Templars' wealth is therefore visible but unsatisfying. Land moved to rulers, favorites, heirs, or the Hospitallers. Livestock and equipment were sold or reused. Revenue paid. Administrators, guards, prisons, pensions, and claims. Deposits belonging to outsiders were contested or returned where possible. Debts were pursued, cancelled, or lost. Portable valuables could be stolen or concealed in many separate acts. Instead of one treasure disappearing, an international organization was liquidated badly. How the treasure legend grew. The Templars did not disappear from memory when Jacques de Molay was burned in Paris in 1314. Their sudden destruction invited explanation. Charges made during the trial included secret rituals, denial of Christ, improper kisses, idols, and other sensational accusations. The papal inquiry preserved at Chinon shows that Clement V's representatives restored senior Templars to communion after confession, penance, and absolution. The order was later suppressed without a final judicial declaration, proving every member guilty of heresy. That ambiguous ending created ideal conditions for myth. If the Templars were innocent victims, perhaps they survived. If they possessed secrets, perhaps those secrets passed underground. If their wealth was not found in one place, perhaps it financed hidden descendants. Every uncertainty could support another story. By the 18th century, strands of Freemasonry adopted Templar names, symbols, and invented genealogies. These organizations were not direct continuations of the medieval order, but repeated ritual association created the appearance of an ancient succession. Romantic literature transformed the Templar into a recognizable figure of mystery, fanaticism, nobility, or forbidden knowledge. Modern occult and conspiracy writing added sacred bloodlines, hidden Gospels, the Holy Grail, and lost relics. 20th-century books connected the order to Scotland and secret societies, while television and treasure hunting carried the fleet toward Oak Island and other unexplained sites. 8. The treasure itself changed with every generation. In one version, it was gold taken from pilgrims or kings. In another, it was the wealth of Solomon's temple. Then it became the Grail, the Ark, the Shroud of Turin, secret knowledge, royal bloodline. Documents, maps to the New World, or evidence that could overturn Christianity. This flexibility is a warning sign. A real historical cache should become more clearly defined as evidence improves. The legendary Templar treasure becomes less defined. It expands to absorb whatever object or secret a later audience finds most compelling. That does not make every treasure claim false. Medieval institutions owned precious objects. Crusaders collected relics. Templar houses stored valuables. Individuals escaped. Records disappeared. But the modern legend is not one claim. It is a container into which centuries of speculation have been placed. The most realistic possibilities. The evidence supports several possibilities, but they are not equally likely. The first is that no central treasure existed in the legendary sense. The Templars were rich because they controlled productive property and financial relationships. Their movable reserves were dispersed, committed, or smaller than later writers assumed. When the crown seized the order, it found goods and assets, but not a single fortune capable of becoming Europe's greatest lost hoard. This is the strongest general explanation. The second possibility is that some portable funds and valuables escaped. Gerard de Villiers was not captured with the senior leadership. The trial testimony refers to horses, ships, and the treasure of Hugues de Perraud, though partly as rumor. Confusion around the arrests would have created opportunities for individual officials, servants, depositors, and sympathizers. A chest or several chests could have vanished without creating a global conspiracy. The third possibility is theft during seizure and administration. Royal officers, local elites, guards, and opportunists had access to movable goods. Imperfect accounting and years of disputed control would allow losses. Treasure removed by an official would not need to reach Scotland. It might disappear into a nearby household. The fourth possibility is that money left France before the danger became obvious, not as an emergency fleet but through normal Templar operations. The order still had commitments in Cyprus and the Mediterranean. Funds could have been transferred for planned campaigns, shipping, or maintenance. Later investigators might then interpret an already depleted treasury as evidence of a last-minute escape. The least supported possibilities are the most famous: a coordinated armada carrying the total wealth of the order to Scotland, a hidden succession beneath Rosslyn, or a transatlantic voyage to Oak Island. 9. These stories require many additional events for which independent medieval evidence has not appeared. A careful verdict must therefore contain both skepticism and restraint. There is no reliable basis for declaring that every valuable object was accounted for. The surviving records are incomplete, and the suppression was violent and chaotic. It would be surprising if nothing escaped. But there is also no reliable basis for treating the legendary treasure as a known historical object. What the treasure that survived reveals. The answer to the original question depends on what we mean by treasure. Did the Knights Templar possess wealth? Absolutely. Their estates, rents, animals, privileges, financial services, and property made them one of medieval Europe's most important religious institutions. Did they possess movable valuables? Almost certainly. Their houses held money, chapel objects, documents, deposits, equipment, and resources required for international operations. Did some valuables disappear during the arrests and suppression? That is plausible, and perhaps likely. On a limited scale. Did one central treasure fleet escape with the Order's total fortune, sacred relics, and secret archives? The evidence does not establish it. The enduring mystery is not why modern treasure hunters have failed to find a mountain of Templar gold. It is why we continue to expect one. The arrest of 1307 destroyed an organization so quickly that its wealth lost its original shape. Fields became royal revenue. Buildings passed to other orders. Objects were sold. Debts became legal. Disputes. Papers entered hostile archives. Brothers entered prisons, monasteries, other orders, or obscurity. The process left no single ending. That fragmentation is the space in which the legend grew. Philip IV may have expected a greater immediate financial reward than he received. Some officials may have been disappointed by the movable wealth at particular houses. Some fugitives may have carried funds. Yet the absence of a royal announcement describing a spectacular hoard does not require 18 ships on the Atlantic. It may simply reveal that the Templars were not wealthy in the way legend assumes. Their true treasure was an organized network, trusted houses, productive land, privileges, information, credit, trained personnel, and connections stretching from the Atlantic to the Eastern Mediterranean. That treasure could not be buried intact because it existed through relationships. Once the order was suppressed, the network was broken and its components were absorbed by the institutions that survived it. 10. There is one final irony. The gold, if any escaped, has remained invisible. The documents created to destroy the Templars have survived. Arrest orders, interrogation rolls, inventories, papal records, and estate accounts now reveal more about the order than any imagined chest could. They do not give us the satisfying discovery promised by legend. They give us something more difficult. A wealthy institution, an aggressive monarchy, a compromised legal process, incomplete accounting, individual escapes, and one rumor that later generations turned into a fleet. So the most honest answer is that Templar treasure existed, but probably not as one lost object waiting to be found. If historians someday identify a sealed cache securely dated to 1307 and linked to a named Templar official, should it be called the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, or simply one surviving fragment of a fortune that was never gathered in one place? 11.